Yo, what's up, guys? It is currently the MLB All-Star break, so not a lot of MLB, but there is tons of League of Legends to bet on. So I'm going to be running you through a bunch of plays, even if you don't watch League of Legends. I think this video will be helpful for you. It's a strategy I use all the time to make money on PrizePicks, also Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is probably the sportsbook I've had the most success on this year. So without further ado, let's just kind of get into it. All of these plays, right, pretty simple. I'm just following the data. I never bet with my gut, are from the Odds Jam Fantasy Optimizer. So Odds Jam Fantasy Optimizer. Pretty simple. All this tool does, so much of the sports betting industry is filled with BS. All this tool does is show you line discrepancies. So I'll give you an example, is you can take a look right here at Ekas League of Legends. He's on the Team Game Ward, if you know what that is. And you're going to see PrizePicks has his line at 1.5, right? And you may be like, okay, who cares? Well, on Underdog Fantasy, Odds Jam's just reading in tens of thousands of odds from PrizePicks, Underdog Fantasy, and pointing out these discrepancies to you. So on Underdog Fantasy, they have his line a full point higher at 2.5. That's a massive discrepancy. PrizePicks has his line at 1.5. Underdog Fantasy has his line at 2.5, right? So think about it. Imagine an NBA player, because the scale is the same, 1.5 versus 2.5, 15 versus 25, right? Imagine if Underdog Fantasy had LeBron's point line at 25 and on PrizePicks it were 15. You'd be like, that's crazy. That's a huge discrepancy. And it's the same thing here. So what I ended up doing is on PrizePicks, I took this guy to go over 1.5 kills. And then on Underdog Fantasy, I took him under 2.5 kills, right? So you don't have to know anything about esports, right, to place this bet. It's a huge line discrepancy. And what I'm doing is called a middle bet. So it may be a little confusing, but I'm taking both the over and the under because the sports books have their line set at such different levels. PrizePicks at 1.5, Underdog at 2.5. We have a huge middle bet, right? Where if Ekas, if he has exactly 2 kills in map 1, then I'm going to win my over and I'm going to win my under, right? My under 2.5. So we're essentially capitalizing on inefficiencies in the market. All these books, they all want to be unique. They all try to set lines independently. So we're taking advantage of that. You don't have to know anything about esports. This is just about data and finding profitable bets, which is all I do on Underdog Fantasy. But anyways, next pick, you can see right here, I mean, there's a bunch, but is right here. Grizzly, his line is 3.5 on PrizePicks. Underdog Fantasy has him at 4.5. So once again, I took the under on Underdog, I took the over on PrizePicks, and if he has exactly 4, then I win my over 3.5 on PrizePicks, and I win my under 4.5 on Underdog Fantasy. So this is called middle betting. And it's a really low-risk strategy where you're essentially just capitalizing on massive differences in sportsbook odds. Now, I do want to mention there's an added benefit of this slip, and the added benefit is that players on opposing teams in esports are positively correlated to go opposite directions. And I know that may be a little confusing, but basically for BDD, he's on the team KT, right? So if he goes under, then Grizzly is more likely to go over, right? They're on opposing teams. So a better way to kind of think about correlation, if that's confusing, is let's go to NFL season, right? And I've given this example before, but whatever, is you can see Patrick Mahomes. Let's say you think he's going to have a great season. You want to take his over in passing touchdowns, right? Well, it probably makes sense to take Travis Kelce, who's his main target, to go over in receiving touchdowns. If Mahomes has a gangbuster season and throws for 50 touchdowns, then Travis Kelce probably went over 9.5 receiving touchdowns. Because it wouldn't make sense on PrizePicks, you're getting the same payout if you take overs versus unders, so it wouldn't make any sense on PrizePicks to take Mahomes over and Kelce under, right? So you'd want to take both overs together because it's positively correlated. And it's kind of the same thing here, right? If Ekas goes over, then Neon is more likely to go under. They're on opposing teams. So when you take players from opposing teams, like I'm doing here, right? So I'm doing it a few different spots, but regardless, you get the point. These outcomes are positively correlated. So hopefully this video was helpful. Again, just kind of trying to explain my thought process, keep these videos educational, strategies you can use to make money. And you don't even need OddsJam to do this. I mean, OddsJam makes it easy because, all this fantasy optimizer does, if we go back to it, is it literally just scans PrizePicks, Underdog Fantasy. It updates tens of thousands of lines every second to point out these discrepancies. But you don't need OddsJam. You could just go to PrizePicks. You could search around their lines manually, compare it to Underdog Fantasy, and look for big discrepancies. So hopefully this video was helpful.